What happens when a joke about a man's body and a child's face follows him all the way into a school parking lot? How far can a husband stay calm while his wife brags that she had to ask his best friend for help before he answers with a court order instead of an argument? Why did I think I could control the story, even when the DNA notice landed in front of our son's teacher? I'm Ianthe Rowe, and I always thought honesty mixed with a little humour was a good thing, even when people said I should think before I opened my mouth. That afternoon at the playground, the sun was low and orange, and Milo was hanging from the metal bars like a tiny monkey, legs kicking, curls bouncing. Elias sat next to me on the bench, his shoulders a bit tight, eyes moving between Milo and Noah, who stood by the swings sipping coffee. I could feel Elias's mood before he even spoke. He did that quiet breathing thing when he was thinking too much. He looked at Milo, then at me, and he asked why our child didn't look like him. He said it soft, but I heard the hurt under it, the doubt he had carried since Milo was born. I hated that weak sound in his voice. It made me feel like I was the bad guy again, just because I was the one who actually got us a baby in the end. So I laughed. I said maybe his size was too small to get me pregnant, and I waved my hand toward his lap like it was a silly joke between us. I added that it was good he had a best friend with stronger genes. Noah choked on his coffee and stared at me, then at Elias. A mum on the next bench turned her head. She heard me. I knew it. And that made it better somehow. If other people heard the joke, then it became real, became the story. I liked that. I liked feeling like I was the one who decided how our life sounded. Elias did not laugh. He asked what I meant by that, and his voice went tight in that small way he had. I rolled my eyes and told him he was being sensitive, that everyone knew I was only joking. I said he had even worried before that something was wrong with him, that maybe he could not get me pregnant, and that I simply found a solution. I reminded him he had said he wanted a family no matter what. He shook his head and said he did not remember it that way. I told him he always remembered things wrong when his pride was hurt, and I patted his knee like I was calming a child. Inside, I was annoyed. He never understood that I had done something brave for both of us. Noah tried to make it lighter. He said I was exaggerating, that we were just joking around. His eyes did not match his voice, though, and he would not look straight at Elias. I noticed that, but I told myself it was just because he was shy about his part. Later that evening, after Milo's bath and after dinner, I sat on the living room sofa with my phone and called Asha on video. I liked telling her stories because she always chose my side. I told her how Elias had asked about Milo's face at the playground. I said that he stared at our son like a stranger and then questioned why Milo looked more like Noah. I explained to her that I shut him down with the size joke. I told her I said his swimmers were too weak and that I had to ask his best friend to help. I did not say I had actually slept with Noah while Elias and I were taking a break. I preferred the short version, the funny version. It sounded better when I said I asked for help, instead of I cheated because I was scared and impatient. Asha laughed loud through the speaker. She said men needed to hear the truth sometimes. She asked if Noah felt proud. I said he pretended not to, but I thought he liked it. As we talked, Elias walked through the room on his way to the kitchen, and Asha asked if he was still sulking. I said he was, right in front of him, and I smiled like it was a joke. He paused in the doorway and looked at me for a moment. He asked Asha if they were laughing at him again, or if he was allowed to know the joke this time. I replied that we were just laughing at how dramatic he was being, and that he needed to relax. He went quiet and left the room. I told Asha that he loved playing the victim, and she said I was too good for him anyway. Much later, when Milo was asleep and the apartment was dark and still, we lay in bed side by side. Elias stared at the ceiling. I could feel questions hanging in the air like little hooks waiting to catch me. He finally asked in a low voice if I really believed he was not enough to give me a child. I sighed and told him he was twisting my words again, that it was just a joke and that everyone knew jokes were half true and half not. I said he should be grateful I did what I did, because now he had Milo, and many men never got that. I added that respect follows results, and I had produced a result. He went quiet, rolled to the edge of the bed, and pulled the blanket tighter around himself. I told myself he was acting like a little boy, not a man. He always did this when things became real. I thought if he had just been stronger and more confident earlier, I would not have had to make hard choices without him. That was the story that made sense to me. I reached for my phone to scroll before sleep. As I lifted it, I saw a soft light from his side. His phone screen glowed in the dark. A small calendar alert slid down from the top. Meeting, personal 8:20 a.m., Oak Ridge Cafe. He tapped it away quickly and turned his back to me, shoulders very straight, breath slow and even. I watched him for a moment, then told myself it was probably some boring work talk or maybe a therapist. Either way, I decided it had nothing to do with me. I was the one who fixed things in this family. The next morning, he left early for that meeting personal at Oak Ridge Cafe, and I pretended not to care. I lay in bed with Milo's little feet pressed into my side, scrolling through my phone, replaying my jokes from the night before in my head. I told myself I was clever, that people liked my honesty, and that Elias would come back calmer once he talked to someone about his pride. That was his problem, not mine. By the time I got Milo dressed and dropped him at preschool, Elias had already sent a short message saying he would be late home that evening because of work. I read it, rolled my eyes, and did not answer. I decided if he wanted to act distant, then I would act busy. I still had a life. I had my job at the dental clinic, my friends, and my stories. At the clinic, the place buzzed with low music and the sound of the drill in the back rooms. I took my place at the reception desk, in the open area where everyone could see everyone. Asha came in a little late, hair still damp from a rushed shower, and leaned over my desk with that look that meant she wanted gossip. I told her I would explain on my break, but she said she already knew enough. She said she saw my comments online and my little joke about asking the best friend for help under Noah's latest photo. I laughed and said people needed to lighten up, but inside I felt proud. If it was online, it was real. If it was a joke everyone knew, then it could not hurt me. That was how I saw things. If you say it first and make it funny, then no one can use it against you. When the waiting room got quiet between appointments, Asha started telling the other assistants my story. She said my boyfriend had tiny swimmers and that I had to sub in his best friend to get pregnant. She pinched her fingers together to show how small, and the two women at the back counter laughed behind their hands. I put my hand over my mouth and pretended to be shy, but I kept watching them, soaking in their reaction. One of the hygienists asked if Noah was technically Milo's real dad. I smiled and said Elias had signed all the papers at the hospital, so what did it matter? I told them I had fixed the problem and that some men just could not handle a strong woman taking action. They nodded, and I saw that look in their eyes, that mix of shock and entertainment. I liked it. I liked being the main character. In the middle of all this, my phone buzzed in my scrub pocket. It was a notification from our joint bank app. On my break, I opened it and saw a small charge from earlier that morning. Oak Ridge Legal Copy Center. The amount was not big, just enough for some prints or scans. I frowned for a second, then shrugged. I told myself it had to be for his work. He handled deliveries and documents all the time. It was nothing. During lunch, Asha posted a short video on her story, a behind-the-desk clip where I was half in frame, laughing. She added a text over it about how some women upgrade the jeans with the best friend when the boyfriend can't perform. She tagged my username and added a winking emoji. I did not make her take it down. If anything, I felt seen. Let people talk. Let them know I was bold. When I got home later, the apartment felt strangely quiet. Milo's little shoes were by the door, but he was not there. Elias had picked him up and taken him to the park. For a moment I felt left out. I told myself it was only because I liked being part of things, not because they were doing something without me. I dropped my bag on the sofa and walked into the kitchen. Two mugs sat on the counter, far apart. His mug was clean and upside down on the drying rack. My mug from the morning still had dried coffee in it. It felt like a message, like a line down the middle of our life. I told myself I was reading too much into it, but it still bothered me. When they came home, Milo ran into my legs and hugged me. Elias greeted me calmly, almost too calmly. He asked how work was. I told him it was fine and that everyone loved my jokes. I said the girls at the clinic thought he was overreacting. He listened without arguing. He did not call me cruel, did not raise his voice. He simply asked if I had told them that Noah helped. I said of course I had, that there was no point hiding it. I said we were adults and that the important thing was Milo existing. I told him he should stop acting ashamed. He went quiet again. Instead of starting a fight, he just took Milo to the bedroom to change him into pajamas. That new calmness made me uneasy. When someone shouts, you know where they stand. When they watch and say almost nothing, it feels like they are building something in their head that you cannot see. Later, after Milo fell asleep, I walked past the living room and saw Elias on the sofa with his laptop. The screen showed a spreadsheet full of initials and dates. He must have heard my step because he quickly minimized it, leaving only a blank desktop and a folder named Household. A small pop-up at the corner said, File uploaded successfully. I asked what he was doing. He said he was organizing bills and notes. I told him he was turning into an old man and laughed, calling it budget cosplay. He did not take the bait. He just said that it was good to keep things clear. That word clear stuck in my ears. That night I called my mother, Lena, and sat on the living room sofa while Elias washed dishes in the kitchen. I told her a clean version of the story about how Elias felt insecure and how I had made a joke to push him to be more of a man. I said I had turned to Noah for support when Elias was doubting himself. My mother said I did what I had to do and that men should be grateful when women take charge. She said if Elias felt small, that was his own mind. I loved hearing that. It made everything I had done seem brave and smart, not selfish. I turned my head so Elias would hear some of it. I spoke louder when I said my mother agreed with me. He did not respond. He dried the last plate, turned off the kitchen light, and walked past me without a word. Later, when we were both in bed again, he lay on his side with his back to me. His breathing was slow, but I could tell he was awake. I told him that my co-workers thought the story was hilarious and that I was becoming something like a legend there. I said he should be proud to be with someone who was not boring. He stayed silent for a long time. Then he said in a flat voice that not everything needed to be a story for other people. He said some things were supposed to stay inside a family. I told him that was old-fashioned and that I refused to live a small life just to protect his ego. He did not argue. He just reached for his phone on the nightstand. The screen lit his face. I saw a call list for a second as he flipped it over. One of the recent entries said private with no number, and below that was meeting personal with tomorrow's date set again. It annoyed me that he was doing whatever this was without telling me. I told myself he was being dramatic, maybe going to a therapist, maybe crying to his father. I did not worry. I had the louder voice, the better story, the public support. That was how you won. The rooftop bar was one of those places that tried too hard to look casual, with fake plants and soft lights and loud music that made people lean close. Asha said we needed a girls plus Noah night to blow off steam, and I agreed. I liked the view, the clink of glasses, the way people looked at us when we laughed too loud. Up there, with the wind in my hair and a drink in my hand, my life felt like a story I controlled. Noah arrived first, in his usual work clothes, shoulders a bit tense. He said he almost did not come, that he thought it might be weird. I told him he was being dramatic. I said he should relax because everyone already treated him like family, and that people knew he was important in Milo's story. I did not say what kind of importance I meant. I liked letting people guess. Asha showed up, hugging him and telling him she still could not believe our fertility adventure. She used that phrase because I had used it first. It sounded fun and brave, not desperate. At the table with drinks lined up, I began to retell the story of how Milo came to be. I liked seeing Noah's shoulders tighten when I talked about asking for help. It reminded me that I had power over both of them in different ways. I told the group that Elias had asked why Milo did not look like him. I said he stared at our son's face like it was a bad mirror. I shared how I shut him down with the joke about his size being too small to get me pregnant, and how I told him I had turned to his best friend for stronger genes. People at the next table turned their heads. Asha clapped a hand over her mouth, but she was smiling. Someone I did not even know asked if I was serious. I said some parts were serious and some were not, and that life was not neat. Another friend asked how Elias took it. I said he should be grateful I got the job done. I used that line a lot. It made me sound practical, like a woman who solves problems. Noah tried to redirect. He said we were just messing around with the story. His voice was lighter than his eyes, and he kept checking his phone like he wanted to escape. I brushed it off. I said if he was so worried, maybe he liked the attention more than he pretended. Asha laughed and told him he was everyone's favourite anyway. I could tell he liked hearing that, even if it scared him. When I went to the bathroom, I checked my own phone. There was a new notification on Elias's calendar, visible on the shared account we still used for some things. Meeting. Personal downtown, 9:45 a.m., every other Thursday. I stared at it for a second. The repeating part bothered me. It meant this was not just a one-time talk. I told myself it was counselling or a men's group or something dull. I told myself he was finally getting help, so I would not have to carry everything alone. After that next meeting, he changed again, but in a new way. He stopped reacting at all when I pushed. If I made a comment about his body or joked about Noah, he did not snap or sulk. He just listened, nodded, sometimes wrote something in a small notebook he kept on the coffee table. That calm made me feel unsteady. It was like shouting into a pillow. I kept pushing, hoping he would explode so I could call him crazy, but he did not. The real test came at Milo's early birthday dinner. Both families and some friends met at a busy family restaurant, the kind with sticky menus and too bright lights. We had pushed the date forward because of everyone's schedules. I thought it was the perfect time to prove everything was fine. I dressed Milo in a shirt that made his curls look even more like Noah's. I told myself that if we all sat together and laughed, that meant nothing was wrong. At the long table, voices overlapped, plates clattered, and kids ran between chairs. Noah sat near one end, half trying to blend in. Elias sat across from me, next to his father, not touching me once. When the food arrived and people started to relax, one of Asha's friends pointed at Milo and said he was a little copy of Noah. The words hung in the air like a dropped glass. I jumped in before anyone else. I raised my voice a bit and said of course Milo looked like Noah, because I had asked Noah for help when Elias's size and swimmers could not handle the job. People froze for a second, then some laughed in that shocked way where they covered their mouths. A cousin laughed louder, asking if I was serious. I said Elias had been worried, that he had doubts about himself, and that I had solved the problem. Elias's mother looked down at her plate, hands tight on her fork. She asked me gently if we had to say that in front of Milo. I told her it was just a joke and that she should be happy to have a grandson at all. Gareth stared at Elias, not at me, like he was trying to measure his son's breaking point. A teen cousin at the far end of the table took out her phone. She aimed it down the table, recording us. Someone shouted for a toast. They said we should raise glasses to the real MVP, and somebody pointed at Noah. His eyes went wide. He said he did not want the toast to be about him. I insisted it was all in fun. I lifted my glass and joked about how some men give their friend a watch, but my man gave his friend a chance to prove his genes. Elias forced a small smile for the video. I saw his jaw clench, but he stayed quiet. Milo looked back and forth between faces, not understanding but feeling the tension. Noah's date, A woman I barely knew became very quiet and soon said she needed to leave early. She said she had an early morning. I knew it was a lie, and I blamed Elias's mood for making everything awkward. After the cake, Marla pulled me aside near the bathroom. She said I was hurting Elias and confusing Milo. She asked me to stop spreading that story, especially in front of my family. I told her she was protecting her son's fragile ego and not seeing how hard I had worked. I said I had carried the pregnancy and done all the work with the child, and now everyone wanted to feel sorry for the man. When we got home, Elias did not lecture me. He simply helped Milo change into pajamas and read him a short story. Then he went to the guest room with his pillow, saying he needed sleep. I followed him later, annoyed by the distance. The bed in there was slightly messed up, like he had slept there before. On the dresser, his notebook sat closed next to his phone. I checked my own phone in the dark. A notification popped up from social media. Someone had tagged me in a story from the restaurant. It was the moment when everyone shouted for a toast, my voice loud as I credited Noah, and the camera caught Elias staring straight into the lens with that tired, calm face. I watched it twice, feeling a strange mix of power and something that felt almost like fear. That night, when the house was quiet and Milo's nightlight made little stars on the wall, he asked me the question that made the air feel heavy. I was sitting on the edge of his bed, smoothing his hair back, when he looked up with those big eyes and asked why kids at daycare said Uncle Noah was his real dad. His voice was small, but the words were not. They hit me in the chest, but I refused to show it. I smiled too fast and told him kids repeat silly things. I said people like to joke because Uncle Noah spent time with us and that some grown-ups talk too much. I told him Daddy Elias was his dad because Daddy was the one who signed his name and stayed with us. Milo frowned and asked why people laughed when I talked about Noah. I told him they were jealous and did not understand our family. It sounded thin even to me, but he was young. I hoped it would be enough. Later, after he fell asleep, I went into the hallway and heard Elias's voice at the far end, near the front door. He was speaking softly on the phone, as if he did not want his words to travel. I heard him say he had new photos and messages, and that he wanted to make sure everything was recorded properly. I heard him repeat dates, like he had them written down. When I stepped into view, he turned away slightly and kept his phone face down in his hand. When he came back to the bedroom, he did not ask me what Milo had said. He just lay down on his side of the bed and turned off his lamp. I asked who he had been talking to. He said it was a follow-up call. That was all. I pressed him, but he stayed calm. He said not every detail of his day was my business anymore. That line cut deeper than shouting would have. A few days later, we went to his parents' house. Their living room always smelled like old furniture polish and tea. Marla had made a simple dinner and tried to keep things light. Milo sat on the floor with a toy truck while adults talked around him. I thought we were here to celebrate his upcoming birthday again, but the room felt different, more tense, less warm. At some point, Marla asked, in a careful voice, if we could talk about the jokes. She said she had seen a video from the restaurant and that some comments online had reached her through relatives. She said she did not like hearing her son be called too small in front of everyone. I laughed and told her people needed to relax and understand that humour kept marriages alive. I reminded her that we would not even have Milo if I had not taken action. Gareth looked at Elias, not at me. He asked quietly if Elias was okay with all this. Elias said he was tired of being the joke in his own family. His voice stayed low and even, but there was something in it I had not heard before. A kind of finality. I told him he was being dramatic, that I was just telling the truth in a fun way. I said he had always been insecure and that I could not spend my life babysitting his feelings. Marla sighed and said this was not about insecurity, but about respect. She said Milo was listening. She said she did not want her grandson growing up thinking his father was a punchline. I snapped back that if Elias wanted respect, he should act more like a man and less like a sad little boy. I knew I was crossing a line, but it felt good in the moment to push back against all of them at once. Elias did not shout. He simply told his parents that he appreciated their concern and that he had things in hand. That phrase bothered me. It sounded like something planned. Gareth squeezed his shoulder and then went to help Milo with his shoes. On the drive home, Elias stared out the window. When I tried to start another round of argument, he said he did not want to fight in front of Milo and turned up the radio instead. A few days after that visit, I noticed a new red circle on the wall calendar in our kitchen. The date sat there, heavy and silent, with Elias's neat handwriting next to it. Downtown, 3:40 p.m. On the counter nearby, there was a small yellow sticky note that said, "Bring forms." I picked it up and waved it at him, asking if he had joined some boring club. He said it was just personal stuff, nothing I needed to worry about. That afternoon, he asked me where Milo's birth certificate was stored and where the hospital paperwork had ended up. He asked the name of Milo's pediatrician and whether I kept his medical cards in my purse or the desk drawer. I smirked and asked why he suddenly cared. He said he just wanted to have the details straight, just in case. I called him paranoid and accused him of planning to run away if I said the wrong thing one day. He did not answer. He just wrote down the information in his notebook. Later that week, I took Milo to the supermarket. The day felt normal at first. Bright lights, carts scraping, the low hum of people talking. While we waited in the checkout line, a neighbour from our building tapped my arm. She grinned and said she had seen a clip online where I joked about Noah being the real dad. She said Milo really did look like Noah and asked how Elias felt about that. Her tone was playful, but the words were sharp. I forced a laugh. I said we were all modern adults and that some old ideas about family needed to die. I told her Elias was just sensitive but would come around. She raised her eyebrows and said she hoped things did not get messy because gossip travelled fast. I hated that word, messy, because it suggested I was not in control. When we got home, Elias was already there with the mail sorted into neat piles on the table. He asked how the trip went. I told him people were still obsessed with us. I said even the neighbour had comments. He did not ask what exactly she said. He just nodded and put a stack of envelopes into a plain binder marked Home. His movements were precise, almost mechanical. That night, after Milo was in bed, I noticed that his side of the bedroom looked different. His clothes were folded more carefully. Important-looking papers were stacked in a straight pile. His phone sat face down but close, always charged. He had changed some passwords on shared accounts too, saying he needed things more secure. I accused him of being secretive. He said he was being organised. When I tried to drag him into one of my usual drama loops, telling him he was cold and unloving, he simply replied that he would not argue anymore. He said he was focusing on Milo, on schedules, and on facts. I told him facts did not keep anyone warm at night. He looked at me with tired eyes and said warmth without respect did not last. A little later, I went to check on Milo. He was awake, lying on his side with his eyes open in the dim light. He asked again, in a small voice, if he was Daddy's child, or Uncle Noah's. The question scraped at something inside me, but I refused to let him see it. I told him he was lucky, because he had many people who loved him. I said kids at school did not know what they were talking about. As I sat on the edge of his bed, Elias walked past the open door, phone in hand. A quiet buzz came from the screen. I could see the reminder flash for a second before he dismissed it. It said, "Meeting, personal 3:40 p.m. He told Milo they would talk soon, that Daddy would explain things in a way that made sense. He did not look at me when he said it. The day he really changed, it started in the parking garage under his office. The air down there always felt damp and echoed with small sounds, like any step might go on forever. I had driven over without telling him, thinking I could catch him alone and pull him back into the same old fight. I wanted him angry again, not this cool, distant version that made me feel small. He walked toward the car with his bag over his shoulder, dressed in his usual work clothes, face calm. I leaned against the trunk and said we needed to talk. I told him he had been cold, that he was ruining our family, that all this personal meeting nonsense was getting in the way of our real problem. I said he was punishing me and Milo just because he could not handle a few jokes. He listened, really listened, but his eyes did not soften like they used to. He waited until I finished. Then he said that from now on we would split some of the bills more clearly. He said he would transfer a set amount each month and that we would both keep better track. He said it in that steady office voice, like he was talking to a client, not to me. I called him controlling. I said he was trying to buy his way out of guilt. He replied that he was protecting Milo's stability, and that was all. I hated how reasonable he sounded. I wanted him to shout, to say something I could throw back at him later. Instead, he checked his phone, and a small alarm popped up on the screen. Paper drop 11:10 a.m. He hit dismiss quickly, but I saw it. I demanded to know what it meant. He only said he had errands. I decided he was being dramatic and told myself it was some boring work thing. That night at home, I heard a low hum coming from the guest room. When I pushed the door open, the shredder was still cooling, a small pile of grey strips in the bin. On the desk sat an unsealed envelope in the outgoing mail tray, plain and blank on the outside. I reached for it, but Elias stepped in behind me and said he would handle the mail. His tone was polite, not angry. That made it worse. Over the next days, his behaviour settled into something new and hard. He did not try to hug me from behind when I cooked. He did not reach for my hand on the sofa. When I complained that he was distant, he answered with times and dates, not feelings. He talked about pickup schedules, about what days he would handle Milo's drop-off, about which bills he had already paid. When I accused him of withholding love, he said he was done arguing in circles. He said he was focusing on what he could control. One afternoon, when he took Milo to the park, I went back into the guest room, needing to see what he was hiding. On the desk, there was a small USB stick labelled with that day's date. His laptop sat open for a moment before it went to sleep, and I caught a glimpse of the desktop. It was almost empty, cleaned up, with only 2 folders in the centre named Archive A and Archive B. The names bothered me. They made everything feel like a project, like he was organising our life into files. I clicked too slowly. The screen went dark as I moved the mouse. I panicked and shut the laptop, then walked around the room, looking at the neat stacks of paper, the folded clothes, the extra set of keys on the dresser. I told myself he was just going through a phase, getting obsessed with order because he did not know how else to cope. I said out loud that he was being cruel, just to hear a different sound. That evening, after Milo's shower, we ended up in the kitchen facing each other. I started another fight, because I did not know what else to do. I told him he was trying to make me look crazy, that he wanted everyone to think I was unstable while he played the calm hero. I said he was planning to abandon Milo by questioning paternity, that he was preparing some twist to hurt me. He leaned back against the counter, hands flat on the edge, and listened until I ran out of words. He did not interrupt. When I finally asked what he thought he was doing, he said, in a very quiet voice, that he was not going to explode, and he was not going to call me names, and he was not going to turn this into a public screaming match. He said he would handle it properly, and that the next steps would not be about shouting but about facts. Milo stood in the hallway, half hidden, backpack already on his shoulders for the next day because he liked to be ready. As those words dropped between us, Elias's phone buzzed on the counter. A new alert flashed across the screen. School 3:05 p.m. The next day, I dressed carefully for school pickup because I wanted to look like the solid, tired, loving mother in front of the teachers and other parents. I put on a soft sweater and fixed my hair so it looked casual but neat. On the walk from the car to the gate, I practiced a little speech in my head about how Elias had become cold and distant, about how I was the one still showing up. I planned to say he was stressed, that I was doing my best for Milo while his father worked through issues. The parking lot was busy with cars and small voices, parents checking their phones, doors slamming, teachers guiding lines of children. I saw Kim, Milo's teacher, near the door with a clipboard. I waved, and she smiled in that polite way teachers do when they know too much and say nothing. I decided I would chat with her, drop a few hints about how I carried most of the load. Then I saw Elias, near the far side of the lot, standing straighter than usual, talking quietly to a man in a plain jacket. The man held a thin envelope in one hand. I felt a small chill but told myself it was nothing to do with me. I called Elias, planning to pull him into my scene, but he did not move toward me. The bell rang. Kids spilled out. Milo ran straight for us, his backpack bumping against his small back, eyes bright. He reached for both of us at once, one hand in mine, one in his father's. Before I could start my practice speech, the man in the plain jacket stepped closer and asked my name in a clear voice. I said it, because what else was I supposed to do in front of my child and his teacher? He handed me the envelope and said, in front of Kim and the other parents, that these were documents from the court ordering genetic testing for Milo, with a lab date already set. At the same time, he turned to Noah, who had just walked up with a toy in his hand, and gave him an identical envelope. I tried to laugh and asked what kind of joke this was, but my voice came out thin. Elias did not shout. He simply stated that this was about the truth and about responsibilities, not about stories or jokes anymore.